Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today. Usually, when we talk about high stakes global intrigue, we're looking at Washington, D.C., or maybe a server farm in Northern Virginia, or, the boardrooms of Silicon Valley.
Sure, the usual centers of power.
Exactly. But today we're heading to the suburbs. Specifically, we're going to a quiet street in Katy, Texas.
It's a very specific kind of quiet, too. It's that manicured two-car garage sprinkler system kind of quiet. You know the type.
I do. But the geography here is actually, well, it's fascinating. If you were standing in our target location, 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, and you look just down the street, maybe, 300 feet away, you'd see the former residence of Robert Mueller.
Yes, that Robert Mueller,
Yeah.
former FBI director, special counsel, a man who essentially embodies the entire federal investigative apparatus.
Which sets a very strange stage, doesn't it? You have the ghost of federal authority just down the block. But inside the garage at 2302 Britton Ridge, there's a very different kind of operation running. We are not looking at a retirement hobby.
No, not at all. We are looking at what appears to be a command center.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're analyzing a stack of documents and recordings, the Agware files, that paint a picture of a conflict so expansive it almost sounds like fiction. But the man at the center of it, Ronaldo Javier Agüer Marcano, is treating it as a matter of life and death.
And we really need to be clear about who Agüer is. This isn't just someone throwing, terms around on a message board. Agüer is a former Google engineer.
Right.
He spent nearly a decade there working in search ranking. He understands data structures, he understands algorithms, and he absolutely understands scale. So when he talks about a system, he's talking about it with the vocabulary of someone who helped build the modern internet's indexing infrastructure.
But his status right now, as of January 2026, is, well, it's complex.
That's putting it mildly.
He identifies as a protected person under the Refugee Convention of 1951. He has filed as a federal whistleblower with the IRS. He considers himself a federal informant for the DEA.
So he's wearing a lot of hats, legally speaking.
And the catalyst for all of this, the thing that kicked it all off, isn't corporate espionage or a business deal gone wrong. It's personal. It's incredibly personal.
It's a custody battle. But to just call it a custody battle is, I think, almost missing the point of Agüer's argument.
I agree.
He claims his child was taken from his home without a valid court order back in March 2025. We're coming up on a year now. And he views this not as a simple family law dispute, but as an act of coercion.
He calls it kidnapping.
He does. He believes his child is being used as leverage to silence him because of what he knows about a much larger global criminal network.
And that is our mission today. We are going to unpack 3 specific pieces of evidence that Agüer has released. We have 2 audio-video demos labeled D99 and D100, which were recorded just days ago on January 21st and 22nd, 2026.
So very fresh material.
Very. And we also have a written history of his computer infrastructure, a document with the incredible title, The KOL Vaccine and the Superdome Debacle.
And this isn't just a story about a legal fight. It's about a man who built a digital weapon, a software system he calls the pipeline, to fight what he describes as a RICO enterprise.
Right, a massive criminal conspiracy.
And, the most fascinating part, the system crashed. It didn't crash because of a syntax error or a bug in the code.
Yeah.
It crashed because the legal questions it was trying to answer were too complex, too morally heavy for the hardware to handle. It literally overheated from the ethics of it all.
We've got a massive conspiracy involving Venezuelan cartels, U.S. tech moguls, a secret internet, and a server rack that's overheating from trying to process the concept of the death penalty.
Where do we even start?
Let's start where Agüer starts, the machine in the garage.
Let's get into the hardware. Because in Agüer's world, the code is the only thing you can really trust.
So in this document, the KOL Vaccine and the Superdome Debacle, Agüer lays out the origin story of his system. And he frames it immediately as a defensive war. He lists his adversaries, and he is not being subtle about it.
No, not at all. He names Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Travis Kalanick, and Pierre Omidyar.
Which is, that's essentially the Mount Rushmore of modern tech disruption right there.
It really is. And he claims that for 18 years, these figures and their networks have been attacking his startups. He describes a very specific method of attack, CTR attacks, routed through Akamai servers.
Okay, for the non-engineers listening, let's unpack that. What exactly is a CTR attack in this context?
So CTR stands for click-through rate. In the world of search ranking, which is Agüer's home, turf signals are everything. Google and other engines, they look at how users interact with a link.
Like, do they click it? How long do they stay on the page?
Exactly. Do they click it? Do they bounce back immediately? Aguirre is alleging that these adversaries use botnets or, manipulated traffic streams and then routed them through Akamai's massive content delivery network.
Why Akamai?
To mask the origin. Akamai is everywhere. It's legitimate infrastructure, so the attack traffic just blends in.
Yeah.
And the goal was to artificially destroy his metrics.
So they aren't hacking his site to take it offline like a denial of service attack. They are hacking the reputation of the site in the eyes of the algorithm.
Precisely. It's a soft kill. You don't need to break down the door if you can just make the door impossible for anyone else to find. You bury the project so deep in the search results that it effectively ceases to exist.
And Aguirre realized that you can't fight an industrial-scale attack like that with, what, a few servers in a closet?
Exactly. He said he was running 3 servers, and he compared it to bringing a knife to a nuclear war. It was completely asymmetrical. He knew he needed to scale up by orders of magnitude. He needed to build a vaccine.
The KOL vaccine. And KOL stands for Key Opinion Leaders. His idea was to inoculate the information ecosystem against this kind of manipulation.
A noble goal, but one that requires a ton of power.
So he needs power, he needs heavy iron. And this leads us to the Superdome debacle. I found this part of the story so human. Because it's that moment where you think your problem is solved and then it just completely falls apart.
Oh, it's the dream of every engineer, right? A relative offers him an HP Superdome X.
Now, we need to pause on the Superdome X. This is not a desktop tower you buy at a big box store.
No, not even close. This is a machine the size of a commercial refrigerator. It's designed for mission-critical enterprise computing. We're talking about a system that can support up to 30-24 processing cores running in parallel.
So what do you normally do with a Superdome X? What's its job?
You run the stock market on it, you model global weather patterns, you simulate nuclear decay. It's an absolute beast. A new configuration could cost upwards of, $200,000?
Yeah.
Maybe more.
And he's offered one for free.
For free. The ultimate solution dropped right in his lap. But there's a catch.
Yeah, there's always a catch.
Always. The contact, a man named Ramon Sanchez, just ghosts him. The machine never ships and never arrives. So Aguirre is left with the architecture for this grand vaccine, but no hardware to actually run it on. He's completely stuck.
And this is where he identifies what he calls the Travis Kalanick mistake. Love this phrase.
It's a great concept. Aguirre argues that the whole Silicon Valley mindset, the mindset of a Kalanick or a Musk, is that resources are the only metric that matters.
Right. If you have the most money and the newest, fastest NVIDIA chips, you automatically win.
Exactly. They view resource constraints as a death sentence. And Aguirre says this is their fatal error. They totally underestimate ingenuity. They underestimate what a desperate, smart engineer can do with junk.
So he goes to eBay.
He goes to eBay. He can't get the Superdome, so he decides to build its little sister. He starts buying up parts for the HPC 7000. This is a blade enclosure system from around 2010.
2010. I mean, in tech years, that is practically archaeology. We are talking about hardware that is old enough to drive a car.
It is ancient. It's a museum piece to some people.
Okay.
But it's enterprise gear from its day. It's built like a tank. So Aguirre basically teaches himself the configuration patterns. He scours old forums, downloads dusty manuals. He buys the blades one by one.
A Frankenstein's monster of a supercomputer.
Pretty much. And he builds this custom cluster in his garage. He even mentions in the document that he had to put the whole rack on wheels.
Why?
Because he has, in his words, early onset arthritis, which, by the way, he suspects was a fake diagnosis planted by the opposition to demoralize him. So he needs to be able to move this 550-pound monolith around by himself.
Wow, that image is just so striking. A man in his garage dealing with chronic pain, pushing a half-ton supercomputer from 2010 around, all in an effort to fight the richest men in the world.
It's the ultimate underdog engineering story. And you know what? It works. He gets it running. He has his spy-hell pipelines and his counterintelligence pipelines active and analyzing data.
But this brings us right to the recording of Demo D99 on January 21st, 2026. The machine is running, but it's screaming.
Literally. You can hear it in the audio of the demo. The fans are at max RPM. It sounds like a jet engine is taking off in his garage.
And Aguirre says the system entered a computational path that was immense. It's overheating. It's crashing constantly.
And this is the pivot point of the whole story, I think. The computer didn't crash because of a memory leak or a bad pointer in the code.
Yeah.
It crashed because of the law. Aguirre calls it a legal singularity.
This is where we need to slow down and really unpack the logic, because this is the core of his pipeline. He's using this custom-built computer to analyze a RICO case.
Right, RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's the tool the feds used to dismantle the mafia in the 80s. The key to RICO is that it allows you to prosecute a leader for crimes they ordered, but didn't, commit with their own hands.
It connects the whole organization.
Exactly. So Agwar inputs a scenario into his pipeline. He asks the system to simulate a very specific legal reality. He asks, what if there is a RICO enterprise with 10,000 members?
Okay, a huge network.
A huge network. And what if, he asks the system, this enterprise conspires to silence a federal informant in the state of Texas?
And Texas is the critical variable here.
It's the most important variable, because Texas has the death penalty. And under federal law, silencing a witness or an informant can also be a capital offense.
Okay, so the computer looks at the inputs. 10,000 members. One conspiracy to commit a capital crime in Texas. How does the computer then calculate liability?
Well, it looks at the concept of shared liability. In a conspiracy, if you're a member of that conspiracy and a crime is committed in furtherance of that conspiracy, you're liable for it. Even if you were just the getaway driver, you're on the hook for the murder.
So the computer did the math.
It did the math.
Yeah.
It reasoned that if the enterprise is one single entity and that entity committed a capital crime, then every member of that entity is liable for the capital punishment.
So the computer concluded that all 10,000 people should get the death penalty.
Exactly. And that is what broke the machine.
It created an infinite loop.
It did. And it's just this fascinating glimpse into how AI or, pure logic systems process moral ambiguity. The system tried to operationalize the judgment. It asked the next logical question: how do you practically execute 10,000 people?
Oh, wow.
It started looking for logistics. Do you build camps? Do you need to construct massive gas chambers? It started running calculations on industrial-scale execution.
That sounds horrific.
It is. And as the computer tried to solve that logistical problem, it started slamming into other laws. It found deep contradictions with human rights treaties. It found contradictions with the Eighth Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment.
And just the logistics of governance itself, right? You can't just wipe out a population the size of a small town without society itself collapsing.
Precisely. The computer effectively overheated, trying to reconcile the cold letter of the law with the messy, complex reality of human existence.
And this is what Agwar calls the individualization of death.
Yes. He realized he had to debug the law itself. He says he spent time with an AI agent, he names Gemini, to understand why his pipeline was looping. And he learned that the U.S. legal system has a built-in safeguard for this exact scenario.
Which is?
You cannot sentence an enterprise to death. You have to individualize the sentence. You have to try 10,000 people separately, prove their individual intent separately, and sentence them separately.
But the pipeline didn't understand that nuance. It's a computer. It treated the enterprise as a single object with 10,000 nodes, and it tried to run the delete command on the whole object at once.
That's a perfect way to put it. And it's a profound metaphor for what Agwar feels he's facing. He feels like he's fighting a monolith, a single giant machine. And when he tried to use the law against it, the law itself choked on the sheer scale of the alleged crime.
There's another detail about the hardware that I found almost funny in a very dark sort of cyberpunk way. The pipeline started getting paranoid.
This is wild. Agwar claims the software, as it was processing all this, it realized that the data involved classified information and connections to, terrorism. So it predicted that the FBI might seize the hardware itself.
Under national security statutes, right?
Exactly. So the software, and he claims on its own initiative, started drafting patent applications.
The computer tried to lawyer up to protect itself.
Yes. It tried to wrap the physical hardware, the C7000 rack, in intellectual property protection. The machine reasoned that if it was part of a patent-pending invention, it might be protected from immediate seizure or destruction.
It was a survival instinct coded into the machine.
It shows the level of autonomy Agwar seems to have built into the system. It's not just running calculations, it's self-preserving.
So we have a machine that is overheating, trying to process mass executions, and filing patents to save its own skin. But why are the stakes this high? Why does Agwar believe he is fighting a RICO enterprise of that magnitude? This brings us to the pirates.
And this is the third pillar of his legal analysis: admiralty law.
Admiralty law. The law of the sea. Now, usually when you hear people bringing up admiralty law in a court case that doesn't involve a shipwreck, it's
But it's usually signed up some pretty fringe legal theories, yeah.
Right, but Agware has a very specific, very strategic reason for bringing it up.
Jurisdiction. That is the one word that matters here. It's all about jurisdiction.
Explain that.
If you are fighting a global conspiracy, one that he claims involves Venezuelan cartels, American tech moguls, and operations in multiple countries, you have a complete nightmare of jurisdiction.
Sure. A Texas court can't touch a guy in Caracas. A U.S. federal court has limits on what it can do in Beijing.
Exactly. But admiralty law, the law of the sea, it applies everywhere.
Universal jurisdiction.
Universal jurisdiction. Agware argues that the definition of a pirate has modernized. It isn't just Blackbeard with a parrot on his shoulder anymore. If an organization is disrupting international commerce or engaging in predatory acts that threaten the stability of nations like, say, manipulating the global internet or running a narco-terror state, they can be classified as pirates under international statutes.
And if you are a pirate, you are hostis humani generis.
An enemy of all mankind.
Which
means any nation can seize you. You can be picked up in London, in Caracas, in San Francisco. It bypasses the need for complex extradition treaties. It bypasses diplomatic immunity. Agware's trying to reframe his enemies not as businessmen or politicians, but as pirates. It's a legal maneuver to unlock the entire world as a battlefield.
Speaking of enemies, we have to talk about the chicken wing.
The chicken wing. I know, it sounds like a lunch special. But in the Agware files, this is a code name for a very specific, very high-level legal adversary on the state side.
And Agware claims that in a previous demo, one called D98, he mentioned this code name, the chicken wing. And the reaction from the other side was immediate.
He says the opposition changed their communication tactics instantly. According to Agware, this network he's fighting was using a secret internet.
Okay, let's pause on that. A secret internet, what does that even mean?
He alleges it's provided by the Communist Party of China and uses cars as relays.
Wait, like regular cars?
Yeah.
Like the car driving down the street next to you?
Yes. Modern cars are basically rolling computers with 5G connections, GPS, all of it. Agware is suggesting a kind of mobile mesh network. If you hack the telematics systems of enough cars in a city, you can bounce encrypted signals between them.
You could create a dark web that exists physically on the highways, completely separate from the fiber optic cables of the regular internet.
That's the idea. It's terrifyingly plausible when you think about it.
So Agware claims his enemies were using this to coordinate their efforts against him. But when he said chicken wing on that recording,
they got spooked. They panicked. They thought he had cracked their comm system. So he claims they abandoned the secret internet.
They went dark.
They went analog. They switched to face-to-face meetings only. And Agware argues this was a huge tactical victory for him.
How so?
Because it caused coordination errors. When you can't securely text your co-conspirators because you're afraid the whistleblower is listening in, you start making mistakes. You miss deadlines. You file the wrong papers with the court. You get sloppy.
And getting sloppy is extremely dangerous when you're dealing with the kind of data Agware claims to have. We have to talk about the Venezuelan connection, the database.
This is the nuclear football of the Agware files, really. He claims to possess a leaked geographical database from Venezuelan intelligence services, and he specifically associates it with Diosdado Cabello.
And Cabello is a major figure. He's the former president of the National Assembly in Venezuela. The U.S. government has indicted him on narco-terrorism charges and put a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head.
He's a heavyweight, a very serious player. And Agware says this database he has contains coordinates, very specific coordinates.
Of what?
Well, he says it marks the location of the house in Abbottabad where Osama bin Laden was killed.
But didn't everyone know where that was after the raid?
Here's the kicker. Agware claims the database marked it with 15-meter precision before the raid happened. And that's not all. He says it also marks the exact location where Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 disappeared.
Whoa, hold on. So he is implying that this cartel, this network, knew where bin Laden was hiding before the U.S. did, and they knew what happened to that airplane.
That is the direct implication. He is trying to tie this network he's fighting in a Texas custody case to the biggest terror events and mysteries of the 21st century.
And here's the key question then. Connect those dots for me. How do we get from MH370 and bin Laden to a family court in Katy, Texas?
It's all about leverage. It's about the statutes. Agware is arguing this. If you are a judge or a clerk or a lawyer in this Texas court, and you are breaking the law to silence me, you aren't just obstructing justice in a divorce case.
You're doing something much, much worse.
You are obstructing a federal whistleblower who holds evidence of global terrorism. You are, in effect, becoming an accessory to the cover-up of 9/11 and MH370.
And that changes the entire legal landscape.
Completely. It triggers federal terrorism statutes.
Yeah.
The statute of limitations for terrorism is much longer, up to 18 years, or sometimes no limit at all for acts resulting in death. The penalties aren't a slap on the wrist. They're life in prison. He is holding this over the heads of the local legal system. He's saying, you think you're playing small ball in family court? I'm about to bring the Patriot Act down on this entire courthouse.
He's visualizing this war on a map, too. He talks about a split in the U.S.
This is something he shows on his site, XisList.org. He describes a visualization of top docs. These are the agents or high-value targets of the network he's fighting. He says if you plot their zip codes on a map of the United States, they form a perfect line, splitting the country in half.
A perfect line. Where does it run?
Right through the mid-Atlantic. He specifically mentions Pennsylvania. He interprets this not as a coincidence, but as a deliberate military tactic.
Splitting the enemy in force.
Exactly. He attributes this strategy directly to Diosdado Cabello. He believes it's a sleeper deployment, a network positioned to paralyze the country by severing the East Coast from the interior in a time of crisis.
It's a terrifying image, and while he is mapping this silent invasion, he's also trying to fight back in the courts with a very different strategy. He mentions a class action lawsuit.
Yeah, this is a pivotal shift in his legal approach. He pivoted from his personal grievance, his own case, to a massive class action lawsuit against what he calls commercial act figures. And he's naming Musk and Kalanick again, alleging the illegal wiretapping of 20,000 U.S. citizens.
20,000 people.
At least. A huge number. But on the very day Aguar tried to upload his evidence for this class action, the judge, a man named Judge George Hanks Jr., dismissed the entire lawsuit.
Which sounds like a defeat.
It does. But Aguar sees that dismissal not as a defeat, but as a critical tactical error by the opposition.
How so?
He believes they dismissed it to distract him, to bog him down. But in doing so, they elevated the conflict. By dismissing a lawsuit that was trying to protect 20,000 people, the judge wasn't just ruling against Ronaldo Aguar. He was, in Aguar's view, actively enabling a mass civil rights violation.
Which gave Aguar new ammunition.
Exactly. It led to the creation of what he calls the January docket.
Which is what? A filing.
It's a 753-page book. Aguar isn't just filing motions anymore. He's compiling history. This book is a narrative with evidence submitted directly to the Department of Justice, framing the judiciary's actions as a coordinated effort to suppress the rights of tens of thousands of citizens.
Let's talk about that suppression. Because Aguar details some very strange things happening at the courthouse level, specifically with the clerks.
This is the ground war of the legal system, and it gets really murky. Aguar claims that clerks in two separate courts, the Fifth Court of Appeals and the 387th District Court, simply stopped docketing his filings.
Meaning he would upload them to the system and they would just disappear.
They'd vanish into the void, never appear on the public record. It's like they never existed.
And he mentioned something called a document swap.
This is an incredibly specific and serious allegation. He says he filed a document that should have been docketed as Index 150. But, he claims, the clerk deleted his filing and replaced it with a duplicate of a filing from the opposing lawyer, a guy named Troy Pickett.
So if you look at the official record,
the record shows Pickett filed twice, back to back, and Aguar filed nothing. His evidence, his argument is just gone.
But why go to those links? Why not just ignore the filing?
He believes it was to hide the content of his filing. Specifically, he was filing evidence of judicial bias. This is where it gets really personal.
The book again?
The book again. Aguar claims he sent his book, the one about judicial misconduct, to the opposing counsel via Amazon. He has the receipts. And he says Judge Telfair, the presiding judge in his custody case, asked him about the book while he was on the witness stand.
So the judge knows he's a subject of the whistleblower's book. He knows he's being accused of crimes by the man standing in front of him.
Which creates a mandatory recusal situation. It's a textbook conflict of interest. You simply cannot be the judge in a case where one of the parties has written and published a book accusing you of crimes.
But Aguar claims they are just ignoring it.
Ignoring it completely. And he alleges the clerks are manipulating the court record to cover up the fact that the motion to recuse was ever properly filed and argued.
And then there's the Mr. Espina anomaly.
This is one of those details that feels like a glitch in the matrix. It's so bizarre. He says that in the official court transcripts, everyone, the judge, the opposing lawyers, everyone refers to him as Mr. Espina.
But that's not his name.
No, it's his former partner's last name. He is adamant that this is intentional.
Why? What's the point?
He says they are calling him by the wrong name to deliberately confuse the record. Think about it. If an investigator or historian or the DOJ later on looks for Ronaldo Aguirre in the transcripts of these hearings, they won't find him.
They'll find this ghost, Mr. Espino.
Exactly. It's a way to erase his identity as a whistleblower from the official legal history of his own case.
That is deeply unsettling. And it all leads us to the showdown, January 22nd, just a couple of days ago, Demo D100. This recording feels different from the others. It's tense.
It is. You can hear it in his voice. It's recorded immediately after he returns from court, the morning of a major hearing.
And he walks us through his strategy.
Yeah.
Since his digital filings were being blocked or deleted, he went old school.
He showed up at 8:30 a.m. and physically filed the documents with the clerk. Paper copies. They can't just delete papers easily. And you know what he filed?
What?
A notice of treason, citing 18 U.S.C. 2381.
He walked into a family court hearing and filed notice of treason. That is bold.
It's escalating the terms of engagement to the absolute maximum. He's telling them, this isn't a custody hearing anymore. This is a crime scene, and you are the suspects.
So the hearing starts. What happens in the courtroom?
Aguirre refuses to participate. He stands up and repeatedly objects, stating, this court does not have jurisdiction. That's his mantra.
And his legal argument for that is?
His argument is that his motion to recuse, the one demanding the judge step down because of the conflict of interest, had been pending for 8 days, and the judge still hadn't forwarded it to the administrative judge for a ruling, which is required by law.
Yeah.
Until that's resolved, he argues, the judge has no authority to do anything in the case.
And the judge's response?
This is the most stunning part. Judge Telfair actually admits it from the bench. Aguirre quotes him as saying, I need to forward that to Judge Brown.
So he admits on the record that he's been sitting on the motion and hasn't followed procedure.
Yes, a direct admission. And then when the judge tries to make Aguirre stay for the hearing, he says something like, I'm not going to excuse you. Aguirre just turns around and walks out of the courtroom.
He walks out on a judge who just gave him a direct order to stay.
He did. He argues that because the court lacked jurisdiction, the judge's order to stay was itself an illegal order. He wasn't going to participate in what he calls his own entrapment.
So he goes home, and this is where the countermeasure, as he puts it, hits him directly.
Right. He walks in the door, and his Xfinity internet is completely cut off. For the first time in 5 months, a total blackout. He has to record Demo D100 using his phone as a hotspot.
A coincidence.
Aguirre certainly doesn't think so. And when he finally gets online, he checks the court docket. He can see that his new physical filings, the treason notice, are listed, but he can't click on them. He gets an error message, public access error.
So the system has blocked him from even viewing his own documents that he just filed.
It's a complete digital blockade. They've shut him out.
So they are squeezing him from every side. The physical court, digital access, even his home internet. And speaking of squeezing, let's talk about the surveillance. Aguirre is convinced his devices are compromised.
He talks about his older Pixel phone being heavily bugged, as he says by the Chinese. But the technique he describes is really sophisticated. He says they aren't just listening to his calls. They are analyzing his keystrokes.
How does that even work?
They listen to the tap-tap-cap of his typing on the screen. By timing the clicks and analyzing the rhythm, they can estimate the length of the message he's writing.
And that helps them how?
It massively narrows down the search space for brute forcing the encryption keys. If they know the message is exactly 140 characters, they don't have to waste time trying to decrypt a 1,000-character string or a 50-character string. It's an ingenious, if terrifying, side-channel attack.
And he also mentions getting extortion messages.
Yeah, he points to text messages he says are from the Adams law firm, the opposing counsel. He claims they told him that the only way he could see his son was if he went to a doctor and took medication,
which he interprets as a ransom demand.
He views it as chemical coercion. Drug yourself into submission, make yourself an unreliable witness, and then we'll give you your child back. In his framework, that's not a legal negotiation. That is a ransom demand.
Despite all of this, the treason allegations, the overheating servers, the missing child, the constant surveillance, Aguirre ends Demo 100 on a strange note of, is it optimism?
It's the logic of the engineer again. He calls it the bright side. He looks at the monopoly behavior of his tech adversaries. They crush all competition. So he reasons, Diosdado Cabello must operate the same way in the global drug trade.
He must hold a worldwide monopoly on narcotics.
That's Aguirre's theory. And if it's a monopoly, that means it has a single point of failure.
The man at the top.
Well, the man near the top.
Yeah.
Aguar argues that if you capture Cavello, who he notes is the number 2, protecting the number 1, you could theoretically end the global drug trade almost instantly. The very consolidation of power that makes the network so dangerous also makes it uniquely vulnerable to a decapitation strike.
So he's sitting there in his house with his internet cut, waiting to see if a warrant is issued for his arrest after walking out on a judge, sending all his files to the DOJ, and hoping that his logic holds up, that this legal vaccine he built can actually cure the system.
It's an incredibly high-stakes gamble. He's betting his freedom, and maybe his life, on the idea that the truth supported by massive data processing on 15-year-old hardware is stronger than the institutional power of the courts in these international cartels.
It's a story that leaves you with so many unsettling questions.
It really does. Yeah. It forces you to confront the fragility of our systems. Aguar's legal singularity, this idea that a crime can be so big that the law itself crashes trying to process it, that's a profound concept for our time.
That's the individualization of death problem again. If a system requires us to prosecute people one by one, but the crime is committed by a Michelle-like entity of 10,000 people acting as one, does the system just fail?
And if the system fails, does the crime become unpunishable by default? That's the terrifying question Aguar's overheating server was asking in his garage.
And then there's the Mr. Espina factor. In a world that is increasingly, almost purely digital, where our lives are defined by records in a database, if the name on the official transcript is wrong, do you even exist in the eyes of the law?
If the record says Mr. Espina was in court, then Ronaldo Aguar wasn't. And if he wasn't there, he can't appeal, he can't speak. In a legal sense, he is erased.
It's a chilling thought to end on. We'll be watching the January docket very closely to see if Aguar's vaccine works or if the system crashes for good.
It's definitely one to watch, no question.
That's it for this deep dive into the Aguar files. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.